what questions do you have? What things are coming up in your business this last week where you're wondering, hey, is this the right decision? Where you're wondering, hey, I'd love to get some feedback on the approach. I'm struggling, or I would just love to, I'm thinking about doing this. Oh, heck yeah. We already got Stacy Russell. I had a great conversation with your husband actually the day I left for Colorado last week. Oh.
He's on Stacy's computer.
Jordan, can you get Stacy back on? I was talking to her, dude.
I was working till 4 a.m., so this is our home computer.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Every time I log on,
try not to brag a little bit about how tough you are. That's cool. You know,
yeah.
I worked till 4:15 a.m. this morning. So weird that you gave up early. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I think every time I log on, it kicks her out. I don't know. Oh, there she is. I'm in.
I'm here as well.
What's
Robert.
up?
Okay. The question is, we basically moved all of our techs except one to install crews from like merit-based pay service techs. And the one guy who we were hoping would like take the sales side over of it and just focus specifically on sales, I could kind of tell he had a weird attitude. And so I was just like, hey man, I need to know, like, is this really what you want to do? Because if you don't, not a big deal. You can be an installer too. I don't know. It was just weird vibes. So he called me back later on that day and he was like, yeah, I don't want to do it. I just want to be an installer. I said, okay, no problem. So I have an interview with a sales position today. Somebody from Mr. Sparky. And I'm wondering, for a sales strictly position, what's a competitive incentive-based pay structure that I could potentially offer that person? Like straight, I'm thinking of giving them two options. One is straight pay as a commission, and one is a combination of salary and commission. So if anybody has just a strictly salesperson, like what does their compensation package look like?
Kip, were you about to say something? Kip Farnsworth? Maybe not.
I can speak to how our cabinet business works. And I've talked to several other cabinet businesses that are similar to mine, and some other friends who are in sales. So with us, we've done it a couple different ways, but we basically pay 10% of revenue on a commission basis. I've talked to some other salespeople who are like around 25 to 29% of gross profit, but those percentages work out about the same.
Yeah, and I like the straight commission or straight revenue approach better.
I do too.
Because then you're almost having to do an extra layer of, figuring stuff out by, okay, what cost of goods sold do we have on this project? And if you're not equipped to like have that really good data, then it just can create issues. And then you might have an employee that's wanting to get close to your numbers or distrust, right? But with the top line revenue, they're going to know, and it just kind of keeps it clean and easy.
We do it. So we've done a couple different ways, but then we also, have done, a salary where we have a base, and that base, once they hit over, so 10% over $600,000 in sales, then we go to a draw. And so as they sell projects, they're able to draw against those future profits or those future earnings. And so, but it all equals out to 10%. Now, I also have a clause in my contract, my employee contract, that says that any job that comes in under a certain margin, they do not get paid on. So they have to meet a minimal margin. We have target margins, but if something goes wrong on a project and that margin is reduced under a certain percentage, then they don't get paid on the job at all.
That's smart.
And it's a good bit lower. So it would be, you'd really have to screw up to not get paid. And I want to allow for enough flexibility, because there's always going to be little things. But so we set target margins, and then, if for some reason, and it's never happened, but if for some reason something went way south, I don't pay on it.
Oh, good. I was actually about to call on you, Jay, as well, because I know you had something you could offer here. Go ahead, sir.
So yeah, we pay 7%. We're a GC remodeling company, so my sales guy gets a straight 7%, and then if he reaches, the goal is $1 million. It's $250,000 a quarter. If he gets that, then he gets an additional 3%. And then if he gets to $1 million, then, and he didn't get his 250 one of the quarters, it's back, he gets that 3% for everything over the year. But I do have a contingency in that contract as well, that if anything, like our standard is 35% margin after his commission. And so anything that comes in below that, his commission's reduced to make up the percentage. So there's not really any instance where he doesn't get paid at all. It's just if he screws up and doesn't price the job correctly, then his commission's reduced until the company profit is where it's supposed to be. On the flip side of that, if something goes wrong during the job that's out of his control, he still gets paid, because it's not fair to him to be punished for something that my project manager messed up or one of the subs messed up or something like that. But in most instances, if something goes wrong on the job, it's typically a sub issue, and we back charge them. So it's, rarely does anybody not get paid around here.
Robert, you're muted.
I muted you.
I appreciate you muting. I forgot that I ordered a smoothie, and it has been sitting in the front desk for like the past hour.
Love a warm smoothie.
They make it frozen, so it's still cold. That's a good thing. So, Jay, how do you pay that out, right? So if you have a guy who is estimating and selling a job, right, then you win the job, do you pay him a certain portion of his commission based upon the draw schedule? Do you pay him on the first draw? How do you actually pay that out?
So when we get we don't call them deposits, we call them builder fees for reasons I won't get into in the state of Texas. But when we get that first builder fee check, he gets 3.5%. And then whenever the job is completed, paid in full, and we know all of our numbers, he gets the remaining. And then at the end of every quarter, I just run see what his sales were for the quarter, and bonus him out accordingly.
Okay, so basically you pay him close to half on the first deposit, half when the job's complete, or when you collect that final builder's fee.
Correct.
That's really good. So Jordan, these have all been great perspectives I really align with. I think the only difference is that with like cabinetry and remodels, you can do a less like a lower commission percentage and still make about the same amount as a guy would in service, making a commission that's somewhere between 17 and like 21%. That is like the actual range. That is a legitimate range of what is done in a service business. A lot of these companies, like I don't know if Mr. Sparky does it, but franchises like that, like if you were to do just a little bit of research online, even you would find that it's typical to pay a guy in a role like this, like 17 to 21% of top line revenue. And the difference between that range is dependent upon how much, if he's going to be doing any actual like installation work or repair work on the job, right? So if he's
He'd be
just going to be
strictly sales.
selling, if he's just going to be selling, then I would maybe keep it around that 16 to 17%, because ideally your payroll on your P&L isn't higher than 25% of your total revenue, right? And if you're going to be paying other guys to go in there, those guys are hourly, maybe they're going to make a lower rate, lower amount, right? You want to be sure that you leave cushion in that commission percentage so that it doesn't exceed 25% total for all of the, let's say pay that you'd have to pay out on that job. And so I always just really encourage people to base these things by going back to the P&L, right? Making sure you can trust that you're doing the right thing so long as the percentages do not exceed what ideally is your current percentage on your profit and loss for payroll, which ideally isn't more than like 25% of your total revenue. I think it's great that you found a guy from Mr. Sparky. I think that's probably the kind of guy that's needed in a role like this. And I mean, I don't know this guy. He could be trash, right? But if he has a career at a company like that, he's going to be coming in already knowing a lot of the things that you guys are doing and wanting to do. And I think he that like won't be an unfamiliar kind of model for him. I would just make sure. I really liked what Jay does with if he priced something wrong, then that eats into his commission. I love that because it will cause the guy to care so much more about correctly pricing a job. And I know that that's been a big sticking point for you with sales guys, is you having to still get involved with the estimating, even though you're paying a sales guy. And that's the only other thing I'd make sure is really, really clear, right? Is your method of estimating and pricing has to be clear. It has to be a system that he can follow, right? So if you expect someone to, price a certain way, but we don't have a checklist, or we don't have we haven't trained him, and we've just kind of briefly gone over it, we're kind of setting him up for failure, right? We got to make sure that we have written down a specific process for estimating, and that could involve your price book or whatever, right? But I really like that kind of, stick, let's say the carrot and stick that Jay has, with there being some sort of consequential outcome to just not paying attention, right? Or not asking the right questions, right? Or whatever may lead to a pricing issue. I think the big thing here is the 17 to 21% sounds like 17% is going to be the way to go. You can play out how much that guy could make in the year by projecting what kind of sales maybe you have had minus 20%, or other people in a similar role have had, to see what kind of money the guy would make. I think that's an important step whenever you're figuring this stuff out. If Johnny was like paying 10%, but he was only selling like $100,000 worth of cabinets a year, right? Like it's not a job that someone could actually live on, right? Or would want. So you want to be sure just to work those things out.
Yeah, he said he wanted to make $200,000 a year when I talked to him on a phone interview. I was like, that's awesome if you're worth it, because that means you're making me a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would ask him about his previous sales. Did you sell over $1 million a year? If so, great. A job as an electrician, right, or in an electrical business that pays over $200,000 a year, that guy needs to be selling over $1 million a year. There are guys who make that kind of money doing what he does, but they're selling like $1 million plus a year. It's doable. Not many people do it, but it's doable, especially at Mr. Sparky, right? Yeah, I've seen guys hit those kind of numbers. It's pretty rare. But yeah, I'd be curious. Did he tell you how he got paid at Mr. Sparky?
No, I'm gonna get more into that. But I know it was an incentive-based position. And I kind of pitched my company to him as the mom and pop version of Mr. Sparky, no franchise.
I think that's good. That's really, really good.
But I know it's
Yeah,
an incentive-based position.
By the way, I would straight up ask him how much he typically sold, like how much he sold each year for the past 3 years. And then I would straight up ask him what he actually made. Not what he wants to make, what he actually made. I would just dive into that question. If he gets really sensitive about it, just say, hey, I want to make sure I can give you an offer that you would actually be excited about. You know, like we recently brought some people on board and I talked about the kind of money they made with them so that I could create a path for them to make more. So I think in recruiting, we ask that question a lot. I just don't think it's that big of a deal. Some people are like sensitive about it. Laura, what's up?
So in regards when you're interviewing candidates, whether for sales or they're going to be a tech who's doing sales as part of their role, is it reasonable to ask them to show proof of like their KPIs? Since Nicole, that's my new obsession, KPIs. It only took 2 years, sorry. They're important.
I mean,
really.
I wouldn't say, hey, can you show proof? I would say, hey, do you have KPIs that you could show me? I think most people, I would assume, would be kind of caught off guard with that kind of question a little bit, just because typically that stuff is tracked internally by their team. But if they're up to snuff, they should know their kind of numbers that they're hitting if they're in like a sales oriented role for sure. And so I would just ask them, hey, can you tell me, instead of maybe asking what's your KPIs, I would just ask them about the KPIs that you're wanting to know about, right? So I'd say, hey, what was your sales last year, right? Do you know your conversion rate? If you show up at 10 appointments, how many of those are you closing? Do you know your average ticket total? Bryce, you got something? I saw you open your mouth. Maybe it was just breathing.
No, it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. Just because the term KPI, a lot of people don't know what that means, even if they're tracking KPIs sometimes. And the proof thing, I don't know. Maybe that wouldn't be such a big deal. I think that could rub people maybe the wrong way. And if we're asking for proof, you know, there might already be a trust issue there. And so hopefully we can vet that kind of stuff out before. But yeah, Laura, I would just ask about the specifics. What KPIs are you wanting to know about? Ask about those things.
Hey, Robert, in that respect, right, one of the biggest things that I know about salespeople is that salespeople love to brag. So maybe you guys kind of put it on them on if they can give you an experience of, you know, some of the things that they've accomplished or what they've done, you know. But I haven't met a sales guy that is top notch that doesn't like to brag about what he does and how much he makes, you know. So maybe you guys can turn it around that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of salespeople, brag is a word. I think the word I like to use is BS. right? And you can't always distinguish like what they're inflating, what they're not. And so if you sense that kind of stuff, yeah, I think asking for verification is okay. I really like putting salespeople kind of on their toes a little bit by asking for specifics, right? To kind of carve through the BS. But I don't know. Some salespeople aren't that way at all, right? They're great salespeople and they're just like very straightforward and technical. And that's what makes them successful. It's kind of like, you know, if you think of a surgeon or a doctor as a salesperson, right? That person doesn't have that kind of persona typically of this like used car kind of sleazy salesman, right? He speaks very definitively. And if he's a good doctor, he definitively gives options and he's able to explain, even if you don't really understand, he's able to give an explanation of why he's making the recommendations, you know, the unforeseen issues they still may have, right? And the steps to move forward accordingly.
I think that the bragging comes into the play. Sorry about that, Robert. In the fact that the type of accounts that they hand, right? From my experience, because when the economy had crashed and I got slow last time around, I did some sales, and some of the guys that have landed, it was in insurance. They love to talk about the big accounts that they landed, and that's what I was trying to refer back to, you know, and how and what. That way, whoever is hiring for the sales position can actually try to, you know, get something that'll help them, you know, make the decision. I guess that's what I'm trying to explain.
Good. All right. Anything else, guys? Any other questions? Big issues that came up in your business this week? Stuff you're working through? Systems you're trying to build? Problems you're trying to solve?
I think for us, for rapid repair construction, the only thing that right now we're just trying to see how the dust is going to settle after making the name transition. So all that's been accomplished, you know, and but the phones are very dormant, you know. So we're just trying to see what's gonna, you know, what changes are gonna happen with what just transpired after Google takes its little bit of time.
I think it's going to be a good move, buddy. I think it's going to be a really good move.
I hear the crickets.
Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts?
Yeah, sometimes we're just okay with that. You know, it's like humans don't want to sit in silence for more than like 3 seconds. But sometimes, you know, what we do is sit here and then someone finally goes, you know, I got something.
You know
Just
what?
like
One of the things I was wondering, is there any way of knowing who's on the call, like what kind of businesses we all have? That way, if we ever have questions, we know who to direct them to as far as that particular business. Is that able? Are we able to share that? That way, everybody knows who and what we do. That way, there's more dialogue.
I mean, that would just require having everyone change their names and putting like a dash, right, in the type of business that they're in. I think normally you can expect that every type of contractor, for the most part, is going to be on this call, right? Like there's going to be someone out there. And I think if you want to ask a specific type of business owner a specific question, our coaches can also like, you know, pull those people in. And so, Jay, Jay just raised his hand.
Hey, Robert.
Dude, great to hear your voice, man. How's it going? It's been a minute.
It's going well. Yeah, things are good. On the salesman setup role or whatever you call it, the commission structures, that interests me. But if you're hiring for cost plus salespeople, right? How would that look like?
I don't think it needs to look any different.
Okay. So
But
same structure applies. Is this okay?
I was going to say, let me ask you, what would cause you to think that maybe that should look different?
No, I just haven't done any kind of cost plus majorly yet, and here lately it's
Yeah.
been creeping up. I thought I'd just go and ask that so I know.
Yeah, Philip.
Hey, sorry, I have a different question. So if you want to answer that first, go ahead.
Yeah, so what I would do, Jay, is, for like a cost plus job, like the way that we teach that and train that is that it's still very important to give an accurate estimate before the job starts, right? Like when we talked about how to sell cost plus jobs, this is something that I briefly covered when we did that a couple weeks ago. When we're selling cost plus jobs, right, and we're giving an estimate, we still want customers to know the same kind of idea as a fixed price job, that, hey, this is the most accurate estimate that we can give you at this side of the job, right? And then I would pay a commission based upon that estimate, right? And then if that salesperson is involved in like adding change orders, right, they could increase that. So I really like Jay's model for cost plus, because you're not having to figure out how to pay the whole commission before the job ends, right? So it's like, well, what happens if the price of the job changes? Well, if you pay the 3.5% up front based upon the estimate, it will probably never, right? His total commission will probably never go lower than 3.5% of the estimate, right? And then you can pay him the remaining amount at the end of the job based upon what those final numbers end up being, right? And you can incentivize him to, while the job is going on, depending upon the kind of role he has and working with the customer ongoing, to where if he's involved in any change orders, that could be a part of his commission as well.
Makes sense, Robert. Thank you.
Yeah. So small amount up front, maybe half up front. You're not, and then you can figure out the rest whenever the job's done based upon the final number.
Got it.
Philip, what's up, buddy?
Hey, so I'm looking at getting out of sales myself and hiring somebody. And my main question is that we have an estimator who won't be doing the sales, and we're just going to hire a separate salesperson to kind of get the leads and process everything. So how would price structure change for, based on like margins of jobs and whatnot? Obviously they're not the ones doing the estimates. So how do we incentivize them without, obviously getting into our margins?
Yeah. So like I said earlier, I would go back to the P&L, right? So what are we paying the estimator to do what he does? What responsibilities does your sales guy actually own? And in accordance to that, what's the total, amount that we're selling? And I'll just make the distribution based upon that. For a role like that, where you're not doing a lot of estimating and you're doing larger projects, like a 3 to 5% range for a role like that isn't uncommon. So but I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. I would always just work these things out on paper, right? So if we're paying a guy, 3 to 5%, and he's selling $1 million a year, right? Well, that's $30,000 to $50,000. So are we going to put him in an opportunity to sell more in a year? Ideally, if you have just a full-time sales guy, he is going to be in that role, right? If our volume is going to be lower, right? And we want to make sure that the package or the offer that we're giving to him is attractive, then we might want to increase that percentage a little bit. But I would play with the percentages a little bit, keeping and adding those percentages, whatever they are, to, okay, if we paid this guy this amount and we did the same amount of revenue that we did last year, or if we did the same amount of revenue that we have done over the past 3 months, if we're growing, we project that out to a full year, right? What's the total payroll burden? And I think you have a lot of freedom to play with those percentages, so long as it's not going over that 25% of your total P&L is going towards payroll. And then I would also, I don't want to crash your setup, but I would also maybe, if you're bringing a sales guy in long term, I would work with him and try to get him to a spot where he can do estimates as well. Estimating is to me in construction is part of the role of sales, right? There is a greater technical knowledge required, which is why it makes sense in some situations to use an estimator who's really good, right? And have a guy just do sales and take the numbers the estimator's giving. But the estimator a lot of times is dependent upon the sales guy's info, right? And so it's like just a natural next step to begin to train that sales guy and estimating, hey, you're figuring out these numbers, you're taking these measurements, you're figuring out what kind of materials the customer wants, right? Well, here's kind of like the next 3 steps to just take that data and turn it into an estimate. But again, ideally, if roles are segmented, then the commission for each job may not be as high, but the ideal is the volume play. That's where they can really make their money because he's not estimating, right? He's now able to sell more.
Yep. And it's one of our PMs that I'm thinking about transitioning because I think his skill set leans more towards sales, and because he's a talker and he can get people excited about upgrades and exciting things that they can add on to their build. And
That's really good.
Yeah, it makes sense, but I just worry he's not. He's one of those people that like is really good at talking to people and just communicating, but on the estimating side, maybe not as technical. Especially because we're estimating like anything ranging from a $300,000 job to like a $1.5 million job. So there's a lot of nitty gritty detail in the estimating process. And
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, he and it's like maybe it's a part-time role at first because he's one of my buddies and he has like a pretty big real estate portfolio, and I think he's bogged down by his own personal investments as well as trying to run pretty complicated high-end jobs. And so it's like, okay, maybe the sales role is more of like a part-time gig at first. And so I've been kind of struggling with how that looks like a pay structure for him.
Yeah, Philip, I would really encourage you to see if you'd be open to starting on terms that you're comfortable with. Meaning that if you're feeling like nervous about it or unsure, and you're like, you know what, I really kind of want to do a test drive first. Let me give you a few jobs to run before we I'm really big on like the 90-day, 60-day kind of test drives with hiring people. Yeah. And so I would just encourage you to not feel the burden to figure out how am I going to make this guy into a full-time job. Come up with maybe a fair commission structure, right? That would be worthwhile for him in the short term. Have him, run a couple of appointments, a few appointments, get his feedback from that, right? And then just grow from there. And if it's the right fit, you guys can continue to, increase that volume that you're giving to him. And if not, then, you've tried something and there wasn't a big time or money or anything like that investment, and it's easy to pivot.
For sure. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's the kind of idea of one-way door decisions versus two-way door decisions, right? Two-way door decision is if you make a decision, there's room to come back from it, right? You can go back through the door you came from. There's not quite as much risk. There's a lot of room to experiment. A one-way door decision takes a lot more time to think through and evaluate, right? Because once you go through that door, there's no coming back. So I would see it doing something like this as a two-way door thing. And I would just try to do a trial run. But if you're doing like $2 million of sales plus a year, and he's going to be involved in a good amount of that, I think at like a 5% commission, could work, right? Now this guy is, has an opportunity to make over 6 figures, right? And you're feeding him leads. He's not having to come up with his own leads. Maybe he brings leads and he gets more commission if he generates the lead, right? But I would just do a trial run.
Cool. Thanks,
All right,
Robert.
we're about out of time. So if people have to go, you can go ahead and head out. But I do want to take Richard's question because I got a little bit more time. Oh, no, Richard. There you go. Okay.
It's really more of a comment for what he was just saying and what you guys were just saying. If you feel like, and I used to train salespeople, I had salespeople in the metal building business for years. We did, $1 million a year in steel. And this was 25 years ago when that was a lot of money. But I'm saying that when you got someone that you identify that you think is a good fit for sales, they kind of have that, ability to connect with a customer or a potential situation, engage them in a conversation. When if you're just concerned on the estimating side, and we used to train sales estimators, technically sales estimators and project managers, kind of a thing, was kind of that scope of the position. As long as you have really good, and you were talking about systems earlier, Robert, which I think is great, is have a good estimating system with good guardrails and test him out. Let him go do a project with someone watching him and see if he can get the estimating thing working. If you think that's a good potential trajectory for him, but have good guardrails in there where, okay, for example, this is our price per foot, or this is our price for whatever, if you're doing piecework or however you're estimating that out, give him a test run and put some guardrails in there so he can't hurt himself and he can't hurt you as a company. And, give him 1 or 2 test runs and see if it looks like it's going to be a good way forward for him or not, would be my recommendation. That's kind of what we used to do years ago. And it seemed to work pretty well as long as we had a good transferable system that they could say, okay, not that it's so simple as it's this price, this price, this price, you just plug in the points, but it was something that was easy enough to follow that they could estimate a reasonable project, that wasn't super complex. They could do it pretty quickly. And I'll let it go with that.
I love that. I cannot emphasize and agree with what Richard's saying anymore. So important to make sure that if you're going to have someone estimating, or even if they're involved in a sales process, to have that sales process actually documented. What does documented mean? Just written down and formatted in a way that covers all the details and that someone can easily follow, right, if they read it. So many times I've seen people be so resistant towards hiring a sales guy, or hesitant or nervous about it. And it makes sense why they're nervous, right? Because they know how to do sales, and it's up here for the most part. Maybe they got some systems, but a lot of it's up here. And there's a lack of confidence in the person being able to come in and know and do what the owner has in the head of the sales process. Well, of course there's a lack of confidence. There's a lack of confidence because you don't have confidence in this person's ability to follow a process because there's not a clearly defined process for them to follow. If you can create a clearly defined process to follow, which is based upon just what you do, what works, what is every individual step. When you're making an estimate, what is every individual step? What's the first thing that you check? What's the websites that you go to? What's the tools that you use, the software that you use? When do you use them? Just define those things. Doesn't take very long most of the time. And then clearly communicate to the person, hey, here's the step-by-step process I want you to follow. Here's what really works. Let's try it out. That is what gives someone a lot of confidence, because as an owner and hiring and building a sales team, because now you are training your team in the thing that you do, which that works. and it's defined and it's documented. So really good, Richard. I'm glad you shared that. I'm also glad that Bob, it looks like you're on the beach golfing, buddy.
Oh yeah, I'm in my little office. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Do you have like a digital golf course in there?
Yeah, I'm trying to. How do I turn off the filter? I don't remember.
So it's at the I think it's the 3 dots next to the hang up sign. If you click those dots and you go to background and effects.
Yeah. Okay. I see it. I still don't see how to turn it off. That's all right.
So there's when you click that, there's like these 2 squares on top of each other, a little blue kind of button, and you can on the part where you see yourself under background effects. And if you click the 2 kind of blue squares on top of each other, there's a no effects applied button. It is kind of confusing how they make it, but
That's all right. Maybe next time I'll show you guys. Yeah, I'm in my
That
garage.
sounds good.
I've got a little golf simulator. I've been listening to you guys while I've been hitting golf balls.
man, that's the dream right there. Okay, I'll stop. This is weird.
Right?
Okay, man, they're adding so many filters. All right, guys. Well, hey, great call today. Really good insight, really good conversation. As always, we like to end with some energy. There goes Bob taking another swing. Love it. So what I do is I count down from 3. If you're new here, 3, 2, 1, and then we all say the word growth on 3, right? So unmute your mics, and here we go. 3, 2, 1. Growth! Have a great week, everybody. And remember, you shall not pass. Who knows where it's from? Who knows the reference? Anybody? Anybody? I know Travis, you know. I know Travis, you know. Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf. Fighting the demon Balog. You shall not pass.
Nice.
I think you guys may have just learned that I'm a bit of a nerd sometimes. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of the week. We'll talk soon.